It was supposed to be just another tense congressional hearing. The room buzzed with anticipation, cameras flashing and microphones hot. On one side sat Judge Brett Kavanaugh, confident and composed, with years of legal power backing his every word. On the other sat Representative Jasmine Crockett, the sharp-witted congresswoman known for her commanding voice and legal acumen. The moment the hearing was called to order, it was clear this wasn't going to be a routine session. Kavanaugh, known for his contentious confirmation process and fiery courtroom presence, had come in with a point to prove. What he didn't expect was to meet someone equally unyielding, someone who had not only read every line of constitutional law, but who lived it, breathed it, and was ready to dissect it publicly, word for word. The opening remarks were civil, but the tension was palpable. Kavanaugh leaned in as he began, his voice calm but unmistakably condescending. He questioned the interpretation of certain civil liberties and suggested that some members of Congress, with a pointed glance, lacked the depth to truly understand the law. Crockett sat poised, allowing him to finish without interruption. The silence after his remarks was chilling. Then, in a voice that cut through the air like a gavel in court, she spoke. "Judge Kavanaugh," she began, "I respect the bench. But let me remind you that respect is earned both in rulings and in conduct. You questioned whether we, as lawmakers, fully comprehend the Constitution. Allow me to clarify. Not only do I understand it, I have practiced it, argued it, and defended it." The room stiffened. Kavanaugh shifted slightly, visibly taken aback. Crockett, however, was just warming up. She pulled out a binder, each tab marked with citations, precedents, and case law. With surgical precision, she began quoting legal opinions, some of which Kavanaugh himself had written, and dissected them, pointing out inconsistencies and potential bias. "You claimed in 2011 that the Fourth Amendment should not be interpreted as a blanket protection against digital surveillance," she said, eyes locked on him. "Yet, in 2017, you supported limitations on federal oversight in private data cases. Which is it, Judge? You can't have it both ways." Kavanaugh opened his mouth, perhaps ready with a rebuttal, but Crockett continued, her tone razor sharp. "I've spent my career defending people who didn't have a bench, or a title, or the luxury of federal clerks. I've defended working families, victims of injustice, and those wrongly accused. I know the law because I've lived it, in courtrooms, not just on paper." By now, the murmurs in the gallery had risen to hushed whispers. Reporters scribbled furiously, and social media was already beginning to light up. The exchange had only just begun. Crockett moved into the subject of judicial neutrality, highlighting moments when the bench had been swayed by politics rather than principle. She recited quotes not from activists or partisans, but from legal scholars and judges, even Supreme Court justices, who warned of the creeping politicization of the judiciary. "You've had the privilege of serving at the highest level," she said, "but privilege doesn't negate accountability. It amplifies it." Kavanaugh, known for his fiery comebacks, seemed rattled. He tried to pivot, raising a procedural objection, claiming that Crockett's line of questioning was more opinion than oversight. But Crockett was prepared. "Objection overruled," she said flatly. "This is a hearing, not a courtroom. And in this room, accountability is not optional." Laughter rippled through the gallery, but Crockett remained serious. She continued, drawing connections between key cases, and framing a narrative that exposed inconsistencies in judicial behavior, without crossing into personal attacks. At one point, Kavanaugh leaned forward, trying to reassert control. "Congresswoman Crockett, with all due respect, legal analysis isn't about emotion." Crockett didn't flinch. "You're absolutely right," she replied. "It's about logic, precedent, and integrity. Which is why I'm quoting your rulings, not your demeanor." Boom. The hearing room fell silent. Even the most seasoned observers couldn't hide their awe. What had started as a subtle attempt at intimidation had backfired spectacularly. Kavanaugh was no longer in command. The spotlight was on Crockett, and she was dismantling arguments faster than they could be made. Crockett began to speak about the real-world implications of judicial overreach, cases where vague language in rulings had cost people their homes, their freedoms, even their lives. She cited examples, statistics, and public reactions. Every point landed. "You sit on a bench that shapes the nation's future," she said. "But if that future is built on ambiguity and selective interpretation, then the law becomes a weapon, not a shield. Kavanaugh finally managed a response, though his tone had shifted from confident to defensive. He insisted that judicial interpretation was complex, and that consistency wasn't always possible. Crockett acknowledged the complexity, but not the excuse. "That's why you must be consistent in principle, even when the outcomes vary," she said. "That's what separates fair judges from political actors." The audience, now glued to the exchange, watched as Kavanaugh's arguments lost traction. He attempted a rhetorical flourish, invoking the Founding Fathers, but Crockett was ready. "With all due respect," she said, "many of those Founding Fathers didn't believe people like me should have a voice. But I do, and I'm using it, for everyone they left out." Applause broke out, brief but powerful. The moderator banged the gavel for order, but the message had been delivered. The final moments of the exchange felt less like a hearing and more like a reckoning. Kavanaugh had underestimated Jasmine Crockett. He came to challenge, to assert dominance, but he left realizing that brilliance isn't measured by titles, it's revealed in truth, logic, and courage. As the hearing adjourned, Kavanaugh offered a polite nod. Crockett returned it, her expression firm but respectful. There was no gloating, no triumphalism. Just resolve. Outside the chamber, the press swarmed. "Representative Crockett, how did it feel going head-to-head with a Supreme Court justice?" One shouted. She paused, then replied simply, "I wasn't going head-to-head with a justice. I was standing up for justice." And with that, she walked off, leaving behind a legacy moment that would echo across screens, headlines, and hearts. It wasn't just a political battle. It was a masterclass. And Jasmine Crockett had just reminded the world why sharp minds and steady voices still matter.